You know, back in 2005, Lou Engle had started the JHOP, Justice House of Prayer, in Washington, D.C., and it was basically a group home where people would just gather and pray and intercede, and they had the nerve to pray for justice to roll like a river off of the Supreme Court steps and to change the tide like segregation was changed in the 60s with Martin Luther King Jr. And one of their young people there had a dream, and in it she came up to this beautiful house, and outside of the house were the letters, The Who. And she and her sisters went into the house, and they went upstairs, and looking into the attic, felt like they had to find something. And they found something that from the past that would be used in the future. And what they found were Dr. Seuss's books in the attic, stored away. This one was written in the 1950s, early 50s, Horton Hears a Who. And it was originally written by Dr. Seuss, who was a cartoonist for the New York Times or magazine, I forget which one, but he really wrote drew some pretty racist cartoons in his early years during World War II against the Japanese. And after the war, he went to Japan and visited the country, and he came up with this idea. And it was originally written for the people of Japan. And but like I was saying, what was written in the past is now being used in the future. And the story I'm going to do, Horton Hears a Who, came out of hearing Lou Engle's preaching back in over 10 years ago up in Pennsylvania. And I thought, well, I can do that. I got to do something. And I thought, let me look at this book. And the words just jumped out at me, and I just kind of consumed it, and I want to share this story with you today. Horton Hears a Who by Dr. Seuss. On the 15th of May, in the jungle of Newell, in the heat of the day, in the cool of the pool, he was splashing, enjoying the jungle's great joys, when Horton the elephant heard a small noise. So Horton stopped splashing. He looked to the sound. That's funny, thought Horton. There's no one around. Then he heard it again, just a very faint yelp, as if some tiny person were calling for help. I'll help you, said Horton, but who are you, where? He looked, and he looked, he could see nothing there, but a small speck of dust blowing past through the air. I say, murmured Horton, I've never heard tell of a small speck of dust that is able to yell. So you know what I think? Why, I think that there must be someone on top of that small speck of dust. Some sort of a creature of very small size, too small to be seen by an elephant's eyes. Some poor little person who's shaking with fear that he'll blow in the pool. He has no way to steer. I'll just have to save him because, after all, a person's a person, no matter how small. So gently and using the greatest of care, the elephant stretched his great trunk through the air. He lifted the dust speck and carried it over and placed it down safe on a very soft clover. Humph, humped a voice. 'Twas a sour kangaroo. And the young kangaroo in her pouch said, too. Why, that speck is as small as the head of a pin. A person on that, why, there never has been. "Believe me," said Horton, "I tell you sincerely, my ears are quite keen and I heard him quite clearly. I know there's a person down there, and what's more, quite likely there's 2, even 3, even 4. Quite likely a family for all that we know, a family of children just starting to grow. So please," Horton said, "as a favor to me, try not to disturb them, just please let them be." "I think you're a fool," laughed the sour kangaroo. And the young kangaroo in her pouch said, "Me too." "You're the biggest blamed fool in this jungle of Nool." And the kangaroos plunged in the cool of the pool. "What terrible splashing," the elephant frowned. "I can't let my very small persons get drowned. I've got to protect them. I'm bigger than they." So he plucked up his clover and he hustled away. Through the high jungle tree tops, the news quickly spread. "He talks to a dustback. He's out of his head. Just look at him walk with that speck on that flower." And Horton walked worrying for almost an hour. "Should I put this speck down?" Horton thought with alarm. "If I do, these small persons could come to great harm. I can't put it down, and I won't, after all. A person's a person, no matter how small." Then Horton stopped walking. The speck voice was talking. The voice was so faint he could just barely hear it. "Speak up, please," said Horton, and he put his ear near it. "My friend," came the voice, "you're a very fine friend. You've helped all us folks on this dust speck no end. You saved all our houses, our ceilings and floors. You saved all our churches and grocery stores." "You mean," gasped Horton, "you have buildings there too?" "Oh, yes," piped the voice, "we most certainly do." "I know," called the voice. "I'm too small to be seen, but I'm mayor of a town that is friendly and clean. Our buildings to you would seem terribly small, but to us who aren't big, they are wonderfully tall. My town's name is Whoville, and I am a Who, and we Whos are all thankful and grateful to you." Horton answered back to the mayor of the town, "You're safe now. Don't worry. I won't let you down." But just as he spoke to the mayor of the speck, 3 big jungle monkeys climbed up Horton's neck. The Wickersham brothers came shouting, "What rot! This elephant's talking to Whos who are not. There aren't any Whos and they don't have a mayor, and we're going to put a stop to this nonsense, so there." They snatched Horton's clover and carried it off to a black-bottom eagle named Vladikoff. A mighty strong eagle of very swift wing. And they said, "Would you kindly get rid of this thing?" And before the poor elephant even could speak, the eagle flew off with a flower in its beak. All that late afternoon and far into the night, that black-bottom eagle flapped its wings in fast flight, while Horton chased after with groans over stones that tattered his toenails and battered his bones. And he begged, "Please don't harm my little folks who have as much right to live as us bigger folks do." But far, far beyond him, the bird kept on flapping, and over his shoulder called back, "Quit your yapping. I'll fly the night through. I'm a bird, I don't mind it. And I'll hide this tomorrow where you'll never find it." And at 6:56, the next morning, he did it. It sure was a terrible place that he hid it. He let that small clover drop somewhere inside of a great patch of clovers, 100 miles wide. "Fine that," sneered the bird, "but I think you will fail." And he left with a flip of his black-bottom tail. I'll find it, cried Horton. I'll find it or bust. I shall find my friends on my small speck of dust. And clover by clover by clover with care, he picked up and searched them and called, "Are you there?" And clover by clover by clover he found the ones that he sought for was just not around. By noon, poor old Horton, more dead than alive, had picked up and searched through 9,005. Then on through the afternoon, hour after hour, until he found them at last. On the 3 millionth flower! My friends, cried Horton, tell me, do tell, are you safe? Are you sound? Are you whole? Are you well? From down on the dustbat came the voice of the mayor. We've really had problems much more than our share. When that black-bottomed birdie let go and we dropped, we landed so hard that our clocks have all stopped. Our teapots are broken, our rocking chair smashed, our bicycle tires all blew up when we crashed. So, please, Horton, pleaded the voice of the mayor, will you stick by us who's while we're making repairs? Of course, answered Horton. Of course I will stick. I'll stick by you small folks through thin and through thick. Humped a voice. For almost 2 days now you've run wild and insisted on chatting with persons who've never existed. Such carryings on in our peaceable jungle. We've had quite enough of your billowing bungle. And I'm here to state, said the big kangaroo, that your silly nonsensical games are all through. And the young kangaroo in her pouch said, me too. With the help of the Wickersham brothers and dozens of Wickersham uncles and Wickersham cousins and Wickersham in-laws whose help I've engaged, you're going to be roped and you're going to be caged. And as for that dust beck, ha! That we shall boil in a steaming hot kettle of hazelnut oil. Boil it, gasped Horton. Oh, that you can't do. It's all full of persons. They'll prove it to you. Mr. Mayor, Horton called. Mr. Mayor, you've got to prove now that you really are there. Quick, call a big meeting. Call everyone out. Make every who holler. Make every who shout. Make every who scream. If you don't, every who is going to end up in a hazelnut stew. Down on the dustbeck, the scared little mayor quick called a big meeting in Whoville Town Square. His people cried loudly. They cried out in fear. We are here! We are here! We are here! We are here! The elephant smiled. That was clear as a bell. You kangaroos surely heard that very well. All I heard, snapped the big kangaroo, was the breeze and the faint sound of wind through the far distant trees. I heard no small voices, and you didn't either. And the young kangaroo in her pouch said, me neither. Grab him, they shouted, and cage the big dope. Lasso his stomach with 10 miles of rope. Tie the knots tight so he can't shake loose. Then dump that dumb speck in the hazelnut juice. Horton fought back with great vigor and vim, but the Wickersham gang were too many for him. They beat him, they mauled him, they started to haul him into his cage, but he managed to call to the mayor, don't give up, I believe in you all. A person's a person, no matter how small, and you very small persons will not have to die if you make yourselves heard, so come on now and try. The mayor grabbed a tom-tom. He started to smack it. And all over Whoville, they whooped up a racket. They rattled tin kettles and beat on brass pans, on garbage can lids and old cranberry cans. They blasted bazookas and blew on great toots, on clarinets, oompas and boompas and flutes. Great gusts of loud ruckus rang high in the air. It rattled and shook the whole sky, and the mayor called up from the howling mad hullabaloo, hey, Hey, Horton, how's this? Is our sound coming through? The elephant answered back, I can hear you just fine, but the kangaroo's ears aren't as strong quite as mine. Are you sure all your who's down in Whoville are working? Quick, look through the town. Is there anyone shirking? Through the town ran the mayor, from the east to the west. But everyone seemed to be doing their best. Everyone seemed to be yapping or yipping. Everyone seemed to be beeping or bipping. But it wasn't enough, all this ruckus and roar. He had to find someone to help him make more. He raced through each building and searched floor to floor. And just as he felt he was getting nowhere and almost about to give up in despair, he suddenly burst through a door in the mayor, found one small shirker quite hidden away in the Fairfax Apartments, apartment 12J. One very small shirker named Jojo was just standing there, bouncing a yo-yo, not making a noise, not a yip, not a chirp. And the mayor rushed inside and grabbed the young twerp. He climbed with the lad up the Eiffelberg Tower. This, cried the mayor, is your town's darkest hour, the time for all who have blood that is red, to come to the aid of their country, he said. We've got to make noises in greater amounts. So open your mouth, lad, for every voice counts. And thus he spoke as he climbed. When he got to the top, the lad cleared his voice and shouted out, Yop! And that yop, that one small extra yop, put it over. Finally, at last, from that speck on the clover, their voices were heard. They rang clear and clean. The elephant smiled. Do you see what I mean? They prove they are persons, no matter how small. And their whole world was saved by the smallest of all. How true, yes, how true, said the big kangaroo. And from now on, you know what I'm going to do? From now on, I'm going to protect them with you. And the young kangaroo in her pouch said, me too. From sun till it's summer, till rain when it's fallish, I'm going to protect them, no matter how smallish. The end. You know, it has been said of the body of Christ, you know, we're one is a hand, the other a foot. But I've heard it said of the body of Christ that it's mostly one big ear. And the hands and the feet are kind of small, and it's kind of a odd-looking thing. But Horton, in that dream, they interpreted it as the prophetic church, with ears to hear things that others can't hear, and a trumpet to declare to the nations. "12J, 12 the number of government, J, Jesus, Yop, young ones praying and prophesying, I urge you on this Pro-Life Sunday, the Sunday before the Roe v. Wade anniversary, to be involved in the pro-life movement. Whatever you can do is what you do for the least of these.